give them the security and the safety that they need. And we're a very open family, so we talk about things that bother us and things that trouble us.
Everything looked normal at the palace, until it wasn't. Camilla had made a sharp move that changed the balance overnight. It happened fast and without warning. The palace later confirmed it, but only after confusion spread among staff and close aides. Catherine's position was affected in a way no one expected, and when William found out, insiders say his reaction was furious. The palace tried to control the story, but the damage was already done. One thing was clear: this was personal, and it cut deep. So what exactly did Camilla do that pushed William to his breaking point? Join us as we delve into the details of what went wrong. Camilla's sudden declaration. The palace gates stood silent under gray morning skies when the official statement appeared on royal communication channels. The words were formal, but their meaning sent a chill through everyone who read them. Camilla had made a significant decision regarding Catherine's position within the royal structure, and the palace was confirming it as fact. The announcement came without warning, catching even the most connected royal observers completely unprepared for what they were reading. The statement outlined changes to Catherine's official responsibilities and roles within the monarchy. Certain duties that had belonged to the Princess of Wales would now be redistributed. The language was carefully crafted to sound reasonable and administrative, but the main message was impossible to miss. This represented a fundamental shift in how Catherine would function within the royal family. The timing of the announcement raised immediate questions about why this was happening now. William learned about the statement moments before it went public. His reaction was immediate and intense, his face darkening as he read the words on the screen. The fact that this was being announced publicly before being discussed privately with him represented a breach of protocol that cut deep. He had always believed that major decisions affecting his wife would at least be communicated to him first. This public announcement felt like an ambush, a deliberate choice to present him with a done deal rather than a discussion. The palace staff moved quickly to manage the initial response from media outlets. Phones rang constantly as journalists demanded clarification and context. The explanation remained vague and administrative, refusing to acknowledge the personal dynamics at play. But everyone working within those palace walls understood the significance of what had just happened. This was not a routine administrative adjustment. This was a power move with serious implications for the future. Catherine was at home when the news broke. She sat quietly, reading the statement multiple times, trying to process what it actually meant. The roles being taken from her were not irrelevant ceremonial positions. They represented meaningful work she had built over years, connections she had carefully nurtured, causes she genuinely cared about. Seeing them reassigned so casually felt like having pieces of herself stripped away without consultation or consideration. The public reaction began building within hours. Social media platforms filled with confusion and anger as people tried to understand what was happening. Catherine had become beloved by millions for her dedication and grace. The idea that she was being diminished in any way struck many as unjustifiably wrong. Questions flooded in about who had made this decision and why it was necessary. The palace's refusal to provide detailed answers only fueled more speculation and concern. Behind closed doors, William began making calls. He needed to understand exactly how this had happened and who had been involved in the decision. Each conversation revealed another layer of planning that had occurred without his knowledge. The decision had not been impulsive or recent. It had been carefully orchestrated over time, with various people contributing to its execution. The realization that this had been developing while he remained unaware made his anger burn even hotter. Charles was unreachable for most of the day. His schedule had been arranged to keep him away from direct communication during the crucial hours following the announcement. This absence felt deliberate, a way of avoiding the immediate confrontation that everyone knew was coming. William recognized the strategy, and it only deepened his sense of betrayal. His father was allowing this to happen, perhaps even supporting it, while refusing to face the consequences directly. The statement's careful wording could not hide the personal nature of what was occurring. Camilla's influence was evident throughout the decision, even if her name appeared nowhere in the official announcement. Those who understood palace dynamics recognized her fingerprints on every aspect of this move. She had wanted this change, had pushed for it, and had ultimately gotten her way. The confirmation from the palace made it official and irreversible. As evening approached, the full weight of the situation settled over everyone involved. This was not something that would blow over quickly or be forgotten. The public confirmation of Camilla's move against Catherine had created a defining moment in the modern monarchy. Relationships had been damaged, perhaps beyond repair. Trust had been shattered in ways that formal statements could never rebuild. William sat alone, staring at the official announcement that had changed everything, knowing that his family would never be the same. The palace lights burned late into the night as staff scrambled to manage the ongoing crisis. But no amount of careful communication could undo what had been set in motion. The shocking confirmation had arrived, and its consequences were only beginning to unfold. The royal family faced an internal division that would reshape everything moving forward, all because of one calculated move that had now been officially acknowledged to the world. The power play unveiled. The specific details emerged slowly, pieced together from various sources within the palace. Camilla had orchestrated the removal of several key patronages that Catherine had developed and nurtured over years. These were not minor ceremonial positions, but substantial roles that allowed Catherine to make genuine impact. Organizations dedicated to early childhood development, mental health initiatives, and family support programs were suddenly being told their royal patron would be changing. The news devastated many who had worked closely with Catherine on these causes. The patronages being stripped away represented what Catherine loved most. She had invested countless hours learning about these organizations, meeting with people they served, and using her platform to raise awareness and funds. Now those connections were being severed without her input or consent. The organizations themselves were caught in an impossible position, unable to protest without appearing to criticize the monarchy. Many leaders privately expressed heartbreak over losing Catherine's involvement while publicly maintaining polite acceptance of the changes. Camilla's team had worked to identify which roles would be transferred. The selection process revealed careful calculation rather than random choice. Each patronage being removed from Catherine represented an area where the younger princess had achieved notable success and public recognition. The pattern suggested this was about diminishing Catherine's influence and visibility, rather than any legitimate administrative need. Taking away her most successful work sent a clear message about power and position within the family. The ceremonial duties being reassigned carried similar weight. Catherine would no longer represent the family at certain traditional events that had become associated with her presence. Annual occasions where she had established warm relationships with attendees would now feature different faces. The continuity she had built was being intentionally broken. Communities that had come to expect her involvement were left confused and disappointed by the sudden changes. Information leaked from palace insiders who felt uncomfortable with what was happening. They described meetings where Camilla had presented these changes as a much-needed modernization. The argument suggested that consolidating certain roles would create efficiency and clarity, but those present recognized the true motivation behind the corporate language. This was about reducing Catherine's independent power base and ensuring she could not build influence that might rival or overshadow Camilla's position as queen consort. The planning had begun weeks earlier, conducted in careful secrecy. Only a select group knew about the proposed changes, and none of them included William or Catherine. Documents were prepared, communications drafted, and organizations discreetly notified before any announcement was made. The thoroughness of the preparation revealed how long Camilla had been considering these moves. This was not a spontaneous decision, but a calculated campaign executed with precision. William's investigation into the timeline uncovered the extent of the deception. While he and Catherine had been focused on their own responsibilities, this plan had been developing in parallel. People he considered allies had participated in keeping him uninformed. The betrayal extended beyond Camilla to include others who had chosen not to warn him about what was coming. Each new detail made the situation feel more intentional and more personal. The specific patronages chosen for removal told their own story. Camilla was taking roles that would elevate her own public profile while simultaneously reducing Catherine's. Some organizations would now answer to the Queen Consort instead of the Princess of Wales. The power dynamic was being visibly and purposely shifted. Public perception would gradually adjust to seeing Camilla in positions previously occupied by Catherine, normalizing the change over time. Catherine reviewed the list of what she was losing with devastation. Each item represented relationships, projects, and impact she had carefully built. The early childhood center where she had spent a full day each month learning and contributing would now receive someone else. The mental health charity where she had shared her own struggles to reduce stigma would have a new patron. The family support network she had helped expand into underserved areas would continue without her. Seeing her work cut off so casually felt like having her purpose questioned and dismissed. The power play became undeniable as more information surfaced. This was Camilla asserting dominance and establishing hierarchy. Catherine was being reminded that despite her popularity and effectiveness, she remained subordinate to the Queen Consort. The message was clear. Camilla could take away what Catherine had built whenever she chose. The move was designed to humble the younger princess and reinforce the pecking order within the family structure. Royal commentators began analyzing the implications publicly. The pattern of removals was too specific to be coincidental or purely administrative. Experts noted that successful working royals typically maintained patronages for years or decades, building deep connections over time. Stripping them away suggested personal motivation rather than institutional necessity. The consensus emerged that this represented a deliberate effort to limit Catherine's influence and independence, and she wasn't enjoying it. William's furious response. William demanded an immediate private meeting the moment he understood the full scope of what had occurred. His message was direct and uncompromising, making clear that this conversation would happen whether convenient or not. The meeting was arranged for late afternoon in a private room away from the main palace offices. William arrived early, his jaw set and his demeanor radiating barely controlled anger. This was not going to be a polite discussion about administrative details. Charles entered the room with Camilla beside him. Their united front was clearly visible. William noted how they positioned themselves together, presenting a team rather than allowing individual accountability. The dynamic was established before anyone spoke. Charles began with attempts at casual greeting, trying to normalize the atmosphere. William cut through the pleasantries immediately, his voice hard and demanding real answers about the decisions that had been made regarding his wife. The confrontation escalated quickly as William laid out exactly what he knew. He detailed the patronages being stripped away, the timing of the decisions, and the deliberate secrecy surrounding the entire process. His anger focused not just on the changes themselves, but on the underlying disrespect of making such significant decisions without any consultation. Catherine was his wife and a senior working royal who deserved basic consideration before her roles were publicly reassigned. Camilla attempted to justify the moves as necessary modernization. She spoke about streamlining responsibilities and creating clearer divisions of labor within the family structure. Her tone was calm and reasonable, presenting herself as someone making difficult but rational choices. William saw through the performance immediately. The specific patronages chosen, the timing of implementation, and the secretive planning all contradicted any claim of simple administrative efficiency. Charles supported his wife's explanations, adding that such decisions were within the purview of the monarch and queen consort. He suggested that William was overreacting to routine organizational adjustments. This dismissal of William's concerns only intensified the confrontation. William pointed out that nothing about these changes was routine, and treating them as such was willful blindness to the personal impact they carried. The argument shifted to the matter of respect and family consideration. William demanded to know why he had not been informed before public announcements were made. The answer came wrapped in another justifications about proper channels and official protocols. But the real message was clear. Charles and Camilla had not felt obligated to consult William because they did not believe they needed his approval or agreement. The hierarchy was being enforced through exclusion. William's fury became more focused as he addressed Camilla directly. He questioned her motivations and challenged her claims about institutional necessity. The patronages being taken were ones where Catherine had achieved genuine success and recognition. Removing them served no purpose except to diminish Catherine's independent standing. Camilla maintained her composed exterior, but the tension in the room made clear that William's accusations had landed with accuracy. The discussion of timing brought the conflict to its sharpest point. William noted that these changes were being implemented during a period when Catherine was particularly vulnerable. The calculated nature of choosing this specific moment to act made the decisions feel especially cruel. Charles attempted to deny any connection between the timing and Catherine's circumstances, but William's detailed knowledge of the planning timeline made that denial impossible to sustain. The meeting revealed the differences in how the two generations viewed family loyalty and mutual respect. William believed that major decisions affecting any senior royal deserved consultation and consideration. Charles and Camilla operated from a more hierarchical framework where the monarch's authority superseded personal relationships. Neither side would yield their position, creating an impasse that no amount of discussion could bridge. William's final statements made his position absolutely clear. He considered these actions a personal betrayal by his stepmother and a failure by his father to protect basic family decency. The damage to their relationships was not something he could simply accept or move past. Catherine had been treated with disrespect, and he would neither forget nor forgive how this had been handled. His loyalty to his wife was absolute and non-negotiable. The meeting ended without resolution or reconciliation. William left the room with the same anger he had brought, now hardened into something more permanent. Charles and Camilla remained behind, facing the reality that their actions had created a rift that might never heal. The family division was no longer theoretical or manageable. It was concrete, personal, and potentially irreversible. The insensitive timing. The exact period revealed the calculated cruelty behind when these changes were implemented. Catherine had been dealing with significant personal challenges during the time when Camilla's plan was being finalized and executed. The overlap was not coincidental. Those close to the situation recognized that Camilla had specifically chosen a moment when Catherine was least able to mount an effective defense or public response. The timing transformed an already aggressive move into something far more ruthless. Catherine's vulnerability during this period was known to everyone within the inner circle. She had been managing health concerns that required reduced public appearances and careful energy management. The stress of her situation was already heavy without adding the betrayal of having her roles systematically dismantled. William's fury over the timing was rooted in this outright violation of basic human decency. His wife was struggling, and instead of rallying around her, his stepmother was actively working to diminish her while she was down. The cruelty of that calculation cut deeper than the actual changes to patronages and duties. It revealed something dark about Camilla's character and her willingness to prioritize power over compassion. Catherine was already dealing with intense scrutiny and concern from the media and public. Now she faced questions and speculation about why her roles were being taken away at precisely the moment she seemed weakest. The narrative that emerged suggested she was being punished or deemed inadequate during a difficult time. Camilla's choices had created that idea, whether intentionally or not. Catherine's friends watched helplessly as the situation unfolded. They understood exactly what was happening and why the timing made it exponentially worse. Several wanted to speak publicly in her defense, but knew doing so would only escalate the conflict and potentially harm Catherine further. The isolation created by the circumstances meant Catherine had to endure this attack during a period when she was already feeling depleted and vulnerable. The timing also prevented William from being as protective as he wanted to be. His own responsibilities kept him occupied during crucial days when the plans were being finalized. Looking back, he realized how his schedule had been managed to keep him away from the palace during key moments. The coordination required to orchestrate both the substantive changes and the timing of implementation revealed sophisticated planning that made the betrayal feel even more deliberate. Medical professionals who understood Catherine's situation expressed private disappointment at the additional stress being imposed. Recovery and healing required calm and support, not institutional conflict and public controversy. The timing of Camilla's moves worked directly against Catherine's well-being in ways that would have a tangible impact on her physical and emotional health. This was not an abstract political maneuver, but an action with real human consequences. The pattern suggested Camilla believed Catherine's temporary weakness represented her best opportunity to make permanent changes. If Catherine had been at full strength, she might have fought back more effectively or rallied public support to resist the moves. By acting when Catherine was compromised, Camilla could present everything as done and settled before opposition could meaningfully organize. The tactical advantage was clear, even if the ethical implications were deeply troubling. William's conversations with his father about the timing went nowhere. Charles maintained that institutional decisions followed their own timelines and could not be delayed for personal circumstances. This response showed either genuine blindness to the cruelty involved or willful determination to support his wife regardless of the human cost. Either way, it represented a failure of fatherly protection that William would not forget. The real motivation behind Camilla's actions. The official explanations about administrative efficiency collapsed under even basic scrutiny. Camilla's real motivation emerged from a deeper place of insecurity and competition. She had spent years watching Catherine's popularity grow while her own public reception remained complicated by history and perception. The younger princess represented everything Camilla was not: young, beautiful, naturally charismatic, and beloved by millions without effort or calculation. That gap had created resentment that festered over time. Catherine's success with her patronages highlighted the contrast between the two women. When Catherine appeared at events, crowds responded with genuine warmth and enthusiasm. Her work generated positive headlines and social media engagement that demonstrated real public connection. Camilla's similar efforts received polite coverage but lacked the real enthusiasm that surrounded Catherine. The difference was measurable and undeniable, creating a constant reminder of the popularity gap. The queen consort position should have provided Camilla with unquestionable status and authority. But titles alone could not manufacture the affection that Catherine received naturally. Public polls consistently showed Catherine ranking far above Camilla in favorability and respect. The crown on Camilla's head did not translate into the kind of public devotion that Catherine inspired simply by being herself. This reality clawed at Camilla's sense of position and importance. Camilla's efforts to build her own public profile had achieved mixed results at best. She worked diligently on various causes and maintained a full schedule of engagements. Yet her work was often overlooked or minimized in favor of coverage focusing on Catherine. Media outlets understood what generated reader interest, and stories about the Princess of Wales consistently masked content about the Queen Consort. The decision to strip Catherine's patronages represented Camilla's attempt to level the playing field through exercise of power. If Catherine could not compete with Camilla's rank and title, then Camilla would ensure Catherine could not outshine her through work and public connection either. Removing the platforms where Catherine excelled served to reduce her visibility and impact. The strategy was about protecting Camilla's ego as much as asserting institutional authority. William understood his stepmother's motivations with painful clarity. He had watched the competition develop over years, noting how Camilla responded to Catherine's successes with an irritation she could barely conceal. The current situation was the summation of long-building resentment finally finding expression through institutional power. Camilla was using her position to wound someone she viewed as a threat to her own standing and legacy. The targeting of Catherine's most successful work revealed the personal nature of the motivation. If this were truly about administrative efficiency, the patronages selected for reassignment would follow some logical organizational principle. Instead, they followed the pattern of what made Catherine most beloved and respected. Camilla was systematically dismantling the exact things that made Catherine shine, creating a void that would reduce the princess's public presence and impact. Charles's support for these moves suggested either ignorance of the true motivation or acceptance of his wife's insecurities as valid justification. Either possibility troubled William deeply. His father was either blind to what was really happening or willing to sacrifice fairness and family harmony to satisfy Camilla's need to destroy a perceived rival. Neither explanation reflected well on Charles's judgment or his priorities as both father and monarch. The revelation of Camilla's true motivation poisoned any possibility of reconciliation. William could not unsee the jealousy and insecurity driving these actions. Every future interaction with his stepmother would be colored by this understanding. She had revealed herself as someone willing to hurt his wife to protect her own ego and status. That knowledge created an unbreakable barrier to any genuine relationship moving forward. Catherine's dignified silence. Catherine made the deliberate choice to maintain public composure despite the private devastation she felt. Her training and instincts told her that engaging in open conflict would only make the situation worse and provide ammunition to those who wanted to paint her as difficult or demanding. She attended scheduled engagements with the same grace and warmth she always displayed, giving no public indication of the crisis occurring behind palace walls. Her silence spoke volumes to those who understood what was really going on. The decision to remain silent required immense self-control and emotional discipline. Catherine wanted to defend herself, to explain what had been done to her and why it was wrong. Every fiber of her being pushed toward speaking out and correcting the false narratives beginning to circulate. But she recognized that doing so would drag the entire institution into open warfare that would damage everyone involved. Her commitment to the monarchy's stability outweighed her personal need for vindication. Friends close to Catherine witnessed the impact that silence was making. She would maintain perfect composure in public, then return home and collapse under the weight of suppressing her true feelings. The emotional load of performing normalcy while internally processing betrayal was exhausting and unsustainable. However, she continued day after day, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break or falter publicly. Her dignified approach made Camilla's actions appear even more vindictive by contrast. Catherine's refusal to fight back or make dramatic statements highlighted the one-sided nature of the conflict. The public could see that Catherine was being attacked while maintaining grace, making Camilla's position increasingly difficult to defend. The moral high ground was clearly occupied, and Catherine held it through so much force of character and restraint. The silence also protected her children from being drawn into adult conflicts they should never witness. Catherine believed that time would reveal the truth without her needing to shout it from the rooftops. The patronages and organizations losing Catherine felt her dignified silence most acutely. They wanted her to fight for the relationships they had built together. But Catherine explained privately that making this a public battle would hurt the causes themselves by turning charity work into royal drama. Her decision to step back gracefully was partly about protecting the organizations from being damaged by association with palace conflicts. Her concern for their well-being, even as she was being removed, demonstrated the genuine nature of her previous involvement. Catherine's private conversations with trusted friends revealed the depth of her hurt. She had genuinely tried to build a relationship with Camilla despite the complicated history. She had made efforts to be respectful, supportive, and kind. The realization that those efforts meant nothing, that Camilla had been planning these moves while accepting Catherine's attempts at connection, cut deeply. The betrayal was not just institutional, but deeply personal. The decision to maintain silence did not mean Catherine was passive or defeated. She was making a strategic choice about how to respond to an impossible situation. Fighting publicly would give her accusers more leverage and shift focus away from the wrongness of what had been done. Staying silent kept the focus on the actions themselves rather than her reaction to them. It was a sophisticated understanding of public relations and long-term positioning. William struggled to accept his wife's approach initially. His instinct was to defend her loudly and aggressively, to make sure everyone knew exactly what had happened and who was responsible. Catherine had to repeatedly explain that her way forward was different from his, that her silence was strength rather than weakness. Eventually, he came to understand and support her choice, even while maintaining his own more confrontational stance. Catherine's silence was actually quite eloquent, revealing everything that mattered without requiring words. The divide within the palace. The palace staff found themselves navigating an impossible situation as the conflict deepened between the two households. People who had worked together for years suddenly had to choose which family to primarily serve. The division was not officially acknowledged or discussed, but everyone felt it in their daily work. Tensions ran high in corridors and offices as employees tried to maintain professionalism while witnessing the family fracture in real time. Catherine's personal staff felt the strain most acutely. They had watched her build meaningful relationships with the patronages now being taken away. They had seen her dedication, the hours she invested learning about complex issues, and the genuine care she showed for the work. Now they were helping manage the transition, as those connections were severed. The emotional effect on everyone involved was high, though they maintained outward composure while performing their duties. The atmosphere in meetings became increasingly uncomfortable when representatives from both households had to interact. Conversations that should have been straightforward coordination became minefields of unstated tensions. People chose words carefully, aware that anything said might be interpreted as taking sides. Catherine's daily routine continued outwardly unchanged, but those closest to her saw the exhaustion accumulating. She rose early, fulfilled every scheduled commitment, and maintained perfect composure throughout. But the effort required to keep functioning normally while processing such deep betrayal was wearing her down. Her staff noticed she was sleeping less and eating minimally, her body reflecting the stress her composure refused to show. The separation between the two households became more formalized as practical necessity. Shared resources and coordinated planning gave way to parallel operations that minimized contact. Schedules were arranged to reduce chances of accidental encounters. The palace complex that had always functioned as one unified operation now operated as two distinct entities sharing physical space but little else. Charles withdrew into his own world, surrounding himself with people who supported his decisions and validated his perspective. He spent less time engaging with palace operations that might bring him into contact with William's frustration. His daily briefings focused on his own schedule and concerns, deliberately avoiding topics that would force him to confront the family damage his choices had enabled. Camilla maintained her schedule as usual, refusing to acknowledge that anything unusual had occurred. She attended her engagements, fulfilled her duties, and presented herself as someone simply doing her job. But the careful avoidance of any mention of Catherine or the changes revealed her awareness of the sensitivity surrounding her actions. She moved through her days encased in a protective shell of denial and justification. The younger royals watched the situation unfold with growing concern for what it meant for the family's future. They saw their relatives divided into camps that could barely speak to each other. The warmth and unity that had once characterized family gatherings had been replaced by cold formality and strategic positioning. Every interaction required calculation about how it might be perceived by different factions. The palace operated under a cloud of tension and division that hampered everyone's work and created a toxic atmosphere. Long-serving palace employees who had witnessed previous family conflicts recognized this situation as different and more serious. Past disagreements had been resolved through time and private negotiation. This divide felt permanent, rooted in actions that could not be undone and hurts that would not heal. The institutional knowledge and experience that usually help navigate difficult periods offered little comfort about how this particular rift might ever be repaired. The impact on Catherine's remaining work became evident as she adjusted to her reduced role. She threw herself into the patronages she still held with even greater intensity. The organizations lucky enough to retain her noticed increased engagement and commitment. She was channeling her hurt and anger into productive action. She moved through its halls aware that some people working there had participated in the planning that stripped away her roles. Others had known what was coming and said nothing. The trust required for a healthy working environment had been shattered, leaving her constantly guarded and watchful. The fallout and the future. The immediate aftermath created an atmosphere of permanent tension within the royal family. Events requiring multiple generations to appear together became exercises in careful choreography designed to minimize direct interaction between William's household and Charles's. The family that presented unity to cameras was fractured beyond repair behind the scenes. Every smile and coordinated appearance required negotiation and compromise that left everyone exhausted and resentful. William made clear through both words and actions that his relationship with Camilla was effectively over. He would fulfill required public obligations that demanded her presence, but nothing beyond that. Private family gatherings that included her were declined or endured with obvious discomfort. The message was unmistakable. She had crossed a line that destroyed any possibility of genuine family connection. Charles had to accept that his son and his wife would never have a real relationship. The rift between William and his father deepened as Charles continued defending Camilla's actions. William had hoped for some acknowledgement of wrongdoing or at least understanding of why the situation was so damaging. Instead, Charles joined with his wife, effectively choosing her over his son in this conflict. That choice would define their relationship for years to come, creating distance that no amount of forced interaction could bridge. Catherine's approach to the situation evolved into something sustainable, but basically changed. She would continue her royal work with the reduced platform she had been left, building new patronages and connections to replace what had been taken. But her relationship with her in-laws would never recover its previous warmth. She treated Camilla with polite formality devoid of any genuine affection or trust. The attempt to build family connection was permanently abandoned. Public opinion overwhelmingly sided with William and Catherine as more details emerged. Royal commentators and casual observers alike recognized the cruelty and calculation behind what had occurred. Camilla's public approval ratings, never particularly strong, took a significant hit as people understood she had deliberately targeted a beloved princess during a vulnerable time. The damage to her reputation was substantial and likely permanent. Questions about the monarchy's future intensified as the public dysfunction became undeniable. People began openly discussing what would happen when William eventually became king. Would he restore Catherine's patronages? Would Camilla face consequences for her actions? The uncertainty created instability in an institution that depended on continuity and predictability. The family drama was undermining confidence in the whole system. Catherine's friends and supporters became more vocal in defending her as the full story emerged. While Catherine herself maintained silence, others felt no such obligation. Carefully sourced stories appeared in friendly media outlets detailing exactly what had happened and why. The narrative shifted decisively against Camilla as more people understood the calculated nature of her actions and the timing she had chosen. Charles faced growing criticism for his handling of the entire situation. As both father and monarch, he had responsibilities that extended beyond supporting his wife's agenda. His failure to protect Catherine or even acknowledge the harm done to her reflected poorly on his judgment and priorities. Questions arose about whether someone willing to allow such family dysfunction was truly fit to lead the institution effectively. William began planning for a future where he would be in charge and able to correct what had been done. He made clear to those close to him that Catherine would be restored to positions of influence and responsibility when the time came. The family that was supposed to embody national unity instead demonstrated petty jealousy and power plays. Catherine's resilience through the ordeal actually strengthened her public standing. People admired how she handled being attacked while maintaining grace and continuing her work. The contrast between her dignified response and the shabby treatment she received made her more beloved than ever. Camilla's attempt to hijack Catherine had backfired completely, instead highlighting exactly why the younger princess commanded such respect and affection. The palace confirmed Camilla's cruel move against Catherine. William responded with fury, and the royal family would never be the same. The incident had exposed divisions that could not be papered over or ignored. Whatever happened next would occur in the shadow of this betrayal, shaping relationships and decisions for years to come. The monarchy had been wounded by its own internal conflicts, and the scars would remain visible long after the immediate crisis had passed. Do you think Princess Catherine did the right thing by maintaining her calm and not pushing back? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.